My name is Marshall Goldsmith. I'll briefly introduce I guess I'll do more than briefly introduce myself. I talked to Fred, and my basic orientation, other than teaching classes, which is what I usually do, is kind of tell the story of my life. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Some Valley Station, Kentucky. Anybody here from Kentucky? Now, I notice a certain anti-Kentucky bias in terms of schools, right? From a small town in Kentucky, Valley Station, Kentucky, I went to an engineering school called Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. Got an MBA at Indiana University, a PhD in college management at UCLA. I was a college professor here at Loyola for 4 or 5 years. I loved it here, had great experiences. George was here, Rochelle was here when I was here back in those days. And then actually I had Rochelle's job for a year or two. So I was one of the first people who was the associate dean of the MBA program back at Loyola. So I had a great experience here. Lyda was here. Kelly was born when we were here. So we had a lot of very fond, positive memories about the school. So then I was at Loyola, and that's when sort of the entrepreneurial thing kicked in. Loyola's always been a fine school. When I was here, they paid me $15,000 a year. Now, $15,000 a year seemed to be quite a bit of money. I met a man named Paul Hersey, H-E-R-S-E-Y. He was Hersey and Blanchard developed something called situational leadership. Ken Blanchard went on to become very famous. He wrote the book 1 Minute Manager. So I met this guy, Paul Hersey, and I learned what he did. And I kind of followed him around. So my first suggestion in terms of getting into the entrepreneurial world is meet other people who've done it before and follow them around. Well, I followed Paul Hersey around and kind of practiced teaching at Loyola the stuff that he was teaching to business executives. One day he got double booked. He said, "Do you think you can do what I do?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, I'm double booked. I need help. Do you think you can do it?" I said, "I don't know." I was making $15,000 a year. He said, "I'll pay you $1,000 per day." I said, "Sign me up, coach." I'm there. Now you have to realize this was 28 years ago. $1,000 for a day for a 28-year-old kid 28 years ago was a lot of money. I did a program for the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. I was saved by basically 2 things. 1, I'm bald, so I looked a lot older than I was. And 2, I was too stupid to understand how important these people were. These people are dealing with billions of dollars. I was just basically too stupid to appreciate how important they were. So I'm working with the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company, did this program. They were pissed when I showed up. They were really pissed because, they were expecting him. Well, I showed up, and they had 2 weeks' worth of speakers, and I got ranked first place of all the speakers. Well, then they were happy. So Paul called him up, expecting to get his butt handed to him, and he said, "Well, I'm sorry I couldn't come. I had to send Marshall." I said, "Look, Paul, we were really pissed when you didn't show up. But of all the speakers, Marshall came in first place." Well, Paul was going to charge them $2,000 a day. That was his fee. But then he was going to reduce the fee to $1,000 because of me. Then he said, "Hell, he came in first place. Why reduce the fee?" So no fee reductions here. So he called me up and he said, "Do you mind if I make $1,000 and you make $1,000? I said, "Paul, I'm making $15,000 a year. You want to pay me $1,000 a day? I don't care if you make $50,000. And he said, "Do you want to do this again?" I said, "Sign me up." Now, again, no offense to Loyola. I do love it here, but the $120,000 I got paid the first year I worked for them as opposed to the $15,000 here. I love it here, but not that much, right? So you all were nice, but you're not that nice, right? So that's basically how I got into the executive education business. And it is, from an interesting entrepreneurial point of view, an interesting business because basically what I sell is ideas. And what I sell is a service as opposed to a product. Now, I had a few experiences that really helped me when I was a PhD student at UCLA. I didn't realize how important they were at the time. But as I go into what I do for a living, you'll see how they shaped my business. What I do is basically 4 things. One is I teach classes. Now, teaching classes is what I love to do the most, same as I did at Loyola, only I teach classes for business executives. I teach at Dartmouth, I teach at Michigan, and then I teach, somebody's here from Boeing, I teach inside large corporations, Johnson & Johnson, IBM, big, huge corporations. My biggest client this year is a company called UBS. a large Swiss bank. I work with Motorola. So my clients are pretty much all multi-billion-dollar companies. What I'm most famous for is I do executive coaching. How many of you have heard the term executive coaching? And many of you have heard this. I'm probably the most famous executive coach in the world. So basically, that's what I do, is executive coaching. And it's a very interesting field. I'll talk about how I got into the coaching field, and that's basically what I'm most famous for. Then the third thing I do is write and edit books and articles. Now, I have one request for tonight, if everybody can write this down. Please go to www.marshallgoldsmithlibrary.com. This is my website, www.marshallgoldsmithlibrary.com. I give everything away. It's all free. It's got videos, articles, all kinds of stuff. So please go visit my website. It's my hobby. I've had visitors from 119 different countries come to my website in the past 4 months. So it's really neat, and it's kind of like what I like to do for fun. So then I write and edit. My new book is coming out in September. My new book is called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And it's about helping successful leaders get better. And then the final thing is I have a business. My business is called Marshall Goldsmith Partners. I don't own the business, and I don't manage the business. After I turned 55, I decided I don't really care about owning the business, don't care about managing the business. They just use my picture, and they send me money every month. So it's a very nice business. I don't have to do anything, and they just send money every month. So it's a fine business. So that's basically the 4 things I do. So life is good. Life is good. I live in Rancho Santa Fe, California, and the only hard part of my life is on American Airlines alone, I do have 8.5 million frequent flyer miles. So I am a mega, mega, mega flyer. Now, back at UCLA, a couple of experiences that shaped my life. What I do for a living is very interesting. I give executives feedback. Now, somebody here said you were from Boeing. Anybody else from Boeing? Oh, just one person from Boeing. But you're from Boeing. Yeah, Alan Mullally runs Boeing Commercial Aircraft. Oh, yeah. Anyway, he is at Boeing. Yeah, they're flying the airplanes, right? Anyway, he was one of my coaching clients. One thing I do is I give executives feedback. So I actually sit there and tell executives what people really think of them. So I interview everyone around them. Let me describe basically how my coaching process works, which is a very fascinating process. First is I only work with people that follow my rules. I have a few basic rules. Rule number 1 is they have to get feedback from all their coworkers. By the way, have any of you ever had a jerky boss before? Raise your hand. Anybody with a jerky boss? Yeah, right. How much fun is that? Well, it's pretty hideous to have a jerky boss. Well, what I do is it's really nice because I not only help people get better, I make life better for everyone around them because I help people change their behavior. So my favorite client, I'll describe. I also do volunteer work. I was not in the Army. I was an anti-war protester as a kid. But after 9/11, I decided, I listened to General Shinseki, who was head of the Army, give a very moving speech. And I decided to donate what I did to the United States Army. So I did training programs for all the generals. And finally, General Shinseki, I was talking to him and said, maybe I'll be a coach for one of the top generals here in the Army. I said, Marshall, that's really nice of you. I know you're a volunteer. You cannot coach them all. If you could only coach one general, who would be the perfect general? I said, can you find me one that's patriotic, cares about our country, a great deal of ethics, integrity, values, tries to do what's right, technically gifted, brilliant, hardworking, dedicated to achieve, arrogant, stubborn, opinionated, know-it-all. Do you think you could find me one? He said, Marshall, we have a target-rich environment. Well, that's my favorite client. I work with a lot of very smart, hardworking, dedicated, gung-ho, stubborn, opinionated people. And have any of you ever had a boss who vaguely resembles such a person? Well, those are the kind of people that I work with every day. And what I do with my coaching clients is they get feedback. So they get feedback from everyone around them. I interview all their coworkers. I say, what's this person doing well? What do they need to do better? What do you have as advice for them? I develop reports. They don't get to see who said what. I go over the reports with them. They pick something to do better. And then I have a very simple model. I don't get paid if people don't get better. Better's not judged by me. Better's not judged by my clients. Better's judged by everyone around the clients. And as Fred and I discussed this, it's basically $250,000 a pop. So it's a pretty simple process. And I talk to the big boss and I say, if you or this guy gets better at this stuff as judged by these people, is it worth this money? Yes or no? The answer is no. Don't hire me. The answer is yes. You can't lose. Either this person's going to get better and I get paid, the person doesn't get better, it's free. It's free. So that's basically what I do. I have rules, and the rules are not negotiable. All the executives I work with have to get feedback. They have to talk to people about what they learned. They have to apologize for previous sins. They have to involve their coworkers. They have to follow up on a religious basis, and they have to get remeasured. And if they don't do that, I just basically don't work with them. Why? I've got a research study I did with 86,000 people. They don't get better, and I don't get paid. It's not worth the effort. So that's basically what I do. Now, how did I get into this kind of crazy entrepreneurial business? I didn't realize it at the time, but this greatest learning I had to help me started when I was at UCLA. Now, again, I was a PhD student, and this was about 1972. Now, there was a term used in those days called hippie. All of you know this term hippie, right? I was actually what was called a hippie. I actually had hair. This hair was long. I had a long beard, and I was a hippie. Now, I'm from Valley Station, Kentucky. So I'm at UCLA, and they had something called encounter groups, where you would sit around and talk about how you felt about everybody. For 3 weeks, I talked about people in Los Angeles. And the gist of my conversation was, people in Los Angeles are so screwed up. They wear these $75 sequin blue jeans, and they drive around in these yellow Rolls Royces, and they're plastic and materialistic, and they're not really into deep and heavy and meaningful things like, of course, me. They're plastic, materialistic, and all they want to do is impress others. For 3 weeks, I'm babbling on about people in Los Angeles. After about 3 weeks, the head of this little encounter group thing is a man named Dr. Tannenbaum. He's a full professor. He's just a great guy, famous man. He scratches his beard. He looks at me and he says, Marshall, who are you talking to? I said, well, I'm talking to the group. He said, who in the group are you talking to? I said, I guess I'm talking to everybody. He said, I don't know if you know this, but every time you've spoken, you've looked at only one person. You've addressed all your comments toward one person and seem interested in the opinion of only one person. Who's that person? Thought about it for a while. I said, you.